When you're ready. Good morning.
Hello.
There you go. Welcome back. Thank you. Happy New Year. Everyone's good? Very good. Today we're announcing that the Australian and Queensland governments will together contribute $19 million to riverine areas to repair them from the severe weather effects that they experienced last year. This is stage 2 of the program, and we'll see areas like this revegetated and protected. Of course, as we recover, there's been a focus on homes and infrastructure, but it's important that we also recover the environment too and make it more resilient. That's important for these localised environmental areas. It's important to protect nearby water and road infrastructure, but also reducing the erosion load on sensitive areas off the coast, such as Moreton Bay or further north of here, the Great Barrier Reef. Shane Newman is representing the Australian government and will say a few words, and Megan Scanlon, our Environment Minister. The Environment Department administers this program, but the program itself is open to groups to apply for from today. They completed stage 1, which was assessing what work was required, and now this $19 million will allow for that work to proceed.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. Yeah, Shane Newman, Federal Member for Blair. This is my local area, and here representing Federal Minister Murray Watt. We're pleased as the federal government to partner with the state government in this disaster ready funding arrangement. Half the money is coming from the federal government. As a federal MP for this area, this connects what we call Colo Bridge, connects Ipswich and Brisbane. For local residents in and around Mount Crosby, Chuar and the northern parts of Ipswich as well, this is a really important bridge, and you can see by the erosion the impact of the riverine damage that was done in this area on the Brisbane River. So it's really important that we look at putting rock stabilisation and riverbank stabilisation. Native vegetation rehabilitation is crucial. Every flood is different, and I've lived through plenty of floods from the 1974 flood to 2011, 2013, and now this flood in 2022. I'm pleased to be here today with Megan and with Stephen, and I thank the Queensland Government for the cooperation they've done with the Albanese Labor Government. It's really critical that we work together at every level of government in terms of the work that's being done here today. So thank you very much, Stephen and Megan, for the cooperation you've given to Murray and his department as well. Thanks.
Thanks, Shane and Deputy Premier. Obviously great to have more than $19 million provided to eligible groups to do this really important restoration work of our natural environment. 39 local government areas will be eligible for this fund, and of course groups like First Nations organisations, natural resource management groups and bulk water utilities will be able to apply for this funding to do really important restoration works. So making sure that they can restore and rehabilitate stream banks, to make sure that we're planting native vegetation in areas, to make sure that we can build these areas back better so that they can be more resilient in the future and that we can protect those really important ecosystems. So I want to acknowledge everyone involved, particularly the groups. There's been 14 groups who were successful in the first round. They've been out on the ground doing those important surveys to assess what damage was done and how we can make sure we protect those areas in the future with this really important on-the-ground funding support.
I'll take questions on this, and then I was going to comment on the Millmerran fires and then other matters. Any questions on this?
How did you come up with the $19 million figure? Is that based on assessments?
That's stage 1.
Yeah. So we obviously negotiate with the federal government. We assess the damage that's been done. Part of stage 1 was really looking at what works needed to be done and supporting those groups to do those assessments. Of course, there are also local councils and other organisations that may fund some of this work themselves already, but we provided that support to determine what allocation was appropriate.
Anything else on this? Nope. I'll just make a few comments then on the fires in Millmerran. Overnight, our fire and emergency service crews battled a large fire in Millmerran, 110 kilometres southwest of Toowoomba. The suburbs affected were Millmerran Woods, Cypress Gardens and the Pines. The fire was 3 hectares in size, 3 kilometres long and 1 kilometre wide. A number of properties were threatened. Residents were evacuated under a public safety preservation declaration that was lifted at 11:45 last night. Damage assessments will now be undertaken. 3 structures at this stage are understood to be lost, including 1 home. Fortunately, no injuries or deaths. Queensland Fire and Emergency Services continue to seek to contain the blaze with fire breaks and crews on the ground. The police have door-knocked residents likely to be affected, and local residents are just urged to stay up to date with information from Fire and Emergency Services. But it just reminds us again how well served our state is by our first responders working through the night here to keep those properties safe. Questions on that or anything else?
There's this call for, because of the Gabba redevelopment, there's a call for the Gold Coast to host the main event. What do you think of that proposal?
The Gold Coast will already be a very significant venue for the Games, which will be hosted right across the southeast Queensland region. After Brisbane, the Gold Coast has the next largest number of venues and events. There will be an athletes' village also on the Gold Coast. I've seen Mayor Tate's comments. I wouldn't be surprised if Mayor Tate thought everything should be on the Gold Coast. You can't blame him for that. It's his job to advocate for the coast. But we are very committed to redeveloping the Gabba to be our Olympic stadium. The Gabba is due for a redevelopment anyway. It's of course home to cricket and the AFL here, and we want to continue to attract those and other events to our state, which really does mean that it's high time for the Gabba redevelopment. We're working on finalising those plans along with the Australian government and looking forward to getting that project underway. Well, as I've said, we continue to discuss with the Australian government the funding arrangements for those venue projects, and once we've concluded those, we'll be able to share more of the details of the plan for the Gabba. But I'm very excited about it. I know that it's going to be a venue that will serve our state for decades and decades to come. A wonderful legacy of hosting the Games here.
Why is it taking so long? Wasn't it just get those plans at the end of last year?
So that project validation work has been completed, and we've now provided those plans to the Australian government. We want to continue and finalise that intergovernmental agreement on those funding arrangements so that we know how those projects will be funded, and with that certainty we'll be able to outline those plans.
How much money do you need to refurbish the Gabba?
We'll be able to outline that at that time.
Another home builder has gone into administration. Are you worried about the subbies not getting paid from another company that's gone down?
Well, certainly we have programs in place to ensure that subbies do get paid. The Palaszczuk government was very pleased to introduce those project bank accounts to try to limit the effect of foreclosures and bankruptcy on subcontractors. I'm not well enough across that case to know what will happen there, but certainly it's unfortunate when these things occur, but we hope that the systems that we have in place to protect subbies are effective.
So who is meant to be paying them? Do you know who's meant to be paying the subbies out of this scheme?
I'm not across the details of this particular bankruptcy, but we're happy to get that detail for you, Josh.
Generally, if a company collapses.
So if the project bank accounts are in place for that particular company, and as I say, Josh, I'm not aware of that level of detail, but in that case, those funds will have been put aside.
How many public servants who have worked for the Queensland government for the past 8 years have had their contact details shared with the unions as part of that union encouragement policy?
So this is the routine work of our departments. It's been in place since we were elected. It's been publicised at many occasions over that 8-year period. Public servants have the option of opting out, but really it makes sure that the union encouragement policy can be implemented so that the unions can contact those workers and offer them the opportunity to join. The kind of information provided is the kind of information that would often be available in a directory or a phone list for an agency. It's not considered private information.
Can employees opt out of this sharing?
They can just opt out.
Just back to the Gabba sort of price tag, do you have an estimation, or are you still working on that?
It will be larger than was originally anticipated. as everyone would be aware, building costs have increased substantially since the original bid, but we'll be able to provide more detailed information about that once we've finalised the plan and the funding arrangement.
How much bigger are we talking? Like, is it in the hundreds of millions of dollars more?
It will be more, Jack, but we'll outline exactly how much more once we've finalised the plan and the funding agreement.
So the project validation work that's been done and is now with the government, does that have a price tag on the gather?
It does, yes.
And why can't you tell us that?
Well, that's the subject of the negotiations with the Australian government that we want to finalise.
So over 2 billion is there? 2.5 billion?
It's a larger number.
It's larger than 2 billion.
We'll get to that detail at the appropriate time.
So double the amount maybe, more than the 1 billion?
It will be more, Marlena, but we will outline exactly how much once we've agreed with the Australian government how we're going to pay for it.
Just on swimming lessons, can you guarantee that every state school in Queensland delivers practical swimming lessons to their students?
I'm advised that swimming lessons are compulsory in all of our schools and that every school has a plan to ensure that those classes are delivered. They will vary depending on availability of pools, obviously. I'm advised by Minister Grace's office that they could have provided that information if they were asked yesterday.
When you say swimming lessons, you mean theory swimming lessons or practical?
Theory and practical. Again, that's a level of detail that could have been provided if asked yesterday.
And so just to clarify, practical is 100%
Yes.
compulsory.
Just to clarify, the story today is 100% incorrect.
And how does it work? What grades are involved in the program?
Well, that will vary school to school, but it is included in our curriculum and all of our schools provide it. And that's a level of detail that could and should have been provided to the media yesterday while that story was being prepared.
Do you think some Queenslanders expect the government to reconvene earlier to pass laws on youth crime?
Well, this is the height of hypocrisy, this ridiculous call from the Leader of the Opposition. He's been leader for more than 2 years now, and not once has introduced a private member's bill, not just on youth crime or crime generally, but on any matter. So if he thought that this was so urgent, then he could have moved legislation at any point in time in the last 2 years. But he is too lazy to do that. All he can do is press conferences. He's not interested in the hard work of governing or of policy formulation.
Do you think he's doing this because he knows the Premier is on holiday?
Look, you have to ask him why he was doing it, but I frankly think it's a bit ridiculous for him to have spent 2 years doing nothing and now demanding that Parliament come back sooner.
I just have a question about the Archerfield Speedway. The managers there are calling on the government to allocate land for a new speedway facility that could then be used for another purpose, say after the Olympics, before the Olympics. Is that something that the government could look into?
Look, I've only heard of that proposal this morning. I'm happy to hear more about it. Always happy to meet and hear good ideas about venues and infrastructure for Queensland. We do have all of the venues that we think we will need for the Olympics in the current Olympics plan, and I know a lot of organisations are looking for ways to get the venues that they want into that plan. But our focus at the moment is on delivering the venues that we told the IOC would be available for the Olympic and Paralympic Games in 2032. If other organisations have other proposals, of course we'll consider them.
Is there any update with last year the Parliamentary Committee recommending that public drunkenness, public urination begging be decriminalised? Is the government going to adopt that recommendation and introduce legislation to repeal these offences?
I understand my recollection is that we said at the time that we would accept those recommendations in full or in principle. I'd need to check for you, Kate, where the implementation of that was up to.
I've got a question for Mr. Newman. Do you think Paul Palaszczuk should have to pay back his superannuation?
Well, that's a matter for him to make his decision in relation to that. He's correctly convicted. He's served his time. He now needs to live his life the way he wants to do it.
There's legislation for federal MPs and state MPs. Do you think there should be legislation introduced to capture local government employees?
Well, that's currently not on the agenda at a federal level. I'm not even aware it's on the agenda at a state level. But in terms of he's been convicted. He's served his time at Her Majesty's pleasure. He's done the right thing by pleading guilty, and he's now out living his life. He's, served the punishment that was meted out to him by the court, and that's that.
The state government says it's the federal government that manages the rules and legislation around super contributions. Should it be up to the federal government to look into this?
Well, I think there's no plans currently to do anything in relation to that. We have a state government, and criminal law is principally a state government responsibility. He's convicted under state government responsibility. He served his time. He's now out. I wish him and his wife well in the future. He's done what he's been convicted for the period of time and has served the period of time that he's been meted out to him. Paul did some good things for Ipswich, but he did some wrong things and he pleaded guilty, and that's that.
Have you spoken to him since he's been released?
No, I haven't spoken to him since that time, but he did some good things in Ipswich, as you would know, and he pleaded guilty to he did the wrong thing, and he's now gone to jail and he's now served his time.
Why do you wish him well? I mean, he was convicted of serious crimes.
Well, I wish anyone well in the recovery and rehabilitation, and he's confessed to what he's done. He's served his time at Her Majesty's pleasure. He's been in prison. I know him. I've known him for a long time. I've known his wife. I've known his family, and I hope he has been reformed, and I hope in the future that he will live his life, he and his wife, quietly and well.
Is that everything? Okay. Sounds good.